Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today for our workshop with Liz Fleming. Liz used to be the efficiency coach and is now the Grants Club. So Liz is going to talk to us about how to understand your business numbers, and being the start of a new financial year is a great time to sort of really get a grip on our numbers and GST and our expenses and all of that fun stuff. So thank you so much for presenting today, Liz, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sandra, and thank you for having me. Yes, that's right. So I'm a bit of a hybrid when it comes to my business. I started out as the efficiency coach. I'm now largely the Grants Club, but I still do some efficiency coach work, and I'm also a chartered accountant. So you might be also thinking, why is the Grants Club lady talking about GST and expenses? I'm a chartered accountant. I don't really do accounts, but I am passionate about businesses being set up properly to do this work. And Sandra and I have had multiple conversations where we've seen business owners start business and get into problems with their expenses, their GST and other things because they just don't know. And then what I'm also, in my experience, finding that accountants are one-sided where they just want your business. So think of me today as a fully fledged chartered accountant, giving you general advice that you can then go and talk to your bookkeeper and your accountant armed with the right questions and knowledge to get the right outcome of what is right for your business. So let's make a start. So as Sandra said, I find that small business owners aren't always across their numbers. And I think this just comes down to the fact that nobody goes into business because they're good at numbers. All the accountants are stuck in their offices. They want to they're risk averse. They're not going to start their own business unless it's in accounting. So I think the majority of business owners are passionate about something else. And then unfortunately, numbers and the legalities around it and keeping the records seems really boring to everybody else. And so this is why it's really important to know your numbers, but this is also why it's a really hard thing. And a lot of people are anxious about it, don't know where to look, and sometimes don't know where to start. So being here today is your first step. And I know it can be overwhelming, but what I want you to feel today at the end of this session is at least a little bit more confident in understanding your numbers, or at least knowing where to look and what those basic steps are that we should be taking to find an accountant and a bookkeeper to assist your business that's got your best interests at heart. And quite often, as a business owner, we're wearing many hats, we're trying to do everything. So I do see that bookkeeping, and so it should be, is one of the first things that is outsourced for businesses, but it's also about finding the right bookkeeper, and then the right accountant that knows your business is going to help you and isn't just going to ring you at year end. So let someone else wear that finance hat and you can get on with doing the rest of your business stuff that you enjoy and the creative elements that are there. So as Sandra said, I am the efficiency coach and the Grants Club, and I'm a business coach and grants coach helping businesses to become more efficient, but also learn about how grants can help their business to grow and thrive. We're all in business to grow. We want to be better. And I know that these things can be really stressful. So I'm here to help you take that stress away, work out what grants are right for you, and work out how we can build that into your strategy. And everything in business comes back to having a strategy. And in basic terms, what are we going to do in the future to get the outcomes that we want? So if you do have questions during the session today, just pop them into the chat. And there'll be some opportunity at the end to ask questions as well. So as Sandra said, we're talking about setting up your finances for success, talking about GST registration, tracking our expenses, and making sure we don't just end up with that shoebox of receipts at the end of the year. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to build good relationships with your finance professionals, accountants and bookkeepers, so that you're not just paying money out and not understanding what they're actually doing for your business and how they're adding value to what you're doing. And then, as I said, there'll be time for questions at the end as well. So let's make a start. How do we set up our finances for success? So I'm assuming here that the majority of you are sole traders, working for yourself, operating under either your own name or a trading name, which is fine. So my first thing is making sure we're separating your personal from business. Now, I remember this was the very first thing we learned at school, way back in third form, when we learned first about accounting, and they said you have to separate personal from business. But what do I mean from that? For starters, it's your bank accounts. So making sure we're not just throwing it into our normal operating day-to-day spending account. So open a business bank account. If you're a sole trader, it can be in your name, it can be an everyday account with low fees, that's absolutely fine. And then what I'm also saying is have a second business bank account for things like GST or savings, or for those things that you want to put money that you want to put aside for a certain expense that's coming up. So just so you can allow yourself to manage the money better and have greater visibility over what's coming in and what's going to go out, but separating it from personal from business. So I've just done my partner's tax return, and I had to trawl through his personal bank account of all his transactions for the last 12 months to pull out the business ones. And now he's set up his own bank account so that next year will be much simpler. Having a chart of accounts, and some of you might be thinking, what do I mean by that? So in a finance system, whether that be Xero or a spreadsheet, we need to be thinking about what kind of expenses have we got and grouping them together. So we're going to group all our administration, we're going to group all our office supplies, we're going to group all our consulting, our networking costs, our website costs. And I would suggest having probably 10 to 15 chart of accounts or accounts that we would regularly use, so that we don't have 100, but we can easily work out how much do we spend on marketing, how much do we spend on advertising, so that each month, each quarter, each year, we can work out how we've gone, where we invested our money, and where we spent in our business, and also from a revenue point of view as well, which is really important. Maintaining accurate bookkeeping on a regular basis. So this can be a spreadsheet. I have a really simple template in a spreadsheet, income at the top, expenses down the bottom, and you just update it every couple of weeks or every month against your bank account, because you're going to have a separate bank account that's just business. And so you're using your bank transactions as your guide to update that spreadsheet. So if anyone does want that template, just let me know, or I can send it through to Sandra. It is really simple, but that is all it needs to be, depending on your business. Managing your cash flow. So we all know that cash is king when it comes to small business. So we need to be keeping track of what money are we expecting to come in, what money are we expecting to spend, how much do we want to pay ourselves, and being proactive about that as well. Sending out our invoices, tracking them, having the due dates, and following up. If someone hasn't paid, send them another email, give them a phone call. So being proactive about collecting the money. If we don't collect the money, we have no business. Now, this one's really important, especially when you're a sole trader and especially when you're just starting out. Knowing your minimum expenses to keep your business operating. So things like your subscriptions, what are you might have a coaching expense that you've got every month. What are your website costs? What are your minimum advertising? What other things are you paying for on a regular basis? Do you have a vehicle that you've got to pay through your business? And what are those minimum costs that you need to cover from revenue of your business every month? And you'll be surprised. And also then factoring in your personal costs as well, because at the end of the day, this is your income. If you want $5,000 to live on for a week, then you've got your expenses. So you need to be making sure that you're generating that money in your business. And knowing what you're spending your money on. I've seen time and time again, people sign up for direct debits or a monthly subscription to something and they're not even using it. So now we need to be cancelling that and setting those budgets at the start of the year. And now is the perfect time, even if you do for the next 6 months, look back and see where you've spent your money on the last 6 to 12 months and see whether there's some costs in there that you don't really need or that you're not going to do again, or some costs in there that you've spent that you definitely do need to do again. Was there a course that you did that you want to do the next course? Is there a networking event or a retreat or an event that you want to travel to? So again, thinking about what have you done in the past is going to help you decide what you do in the future for your success. And as I've said before, having a finance system, but this can be a spreadsheet. I do love Xero. So if you do want a system, Xero is It's really got all the bells and whistles. It's got all the add-ons that we need, but it's also it's designed for small businesses. And I've worked in corporates where the finance systems were so convoluted that we would have to change and, do more journals and manual updates and things like that, whereas Xero has been designed for the small business, and I absolutely love it. It's so easy, but again, you need to be set up properly. As a sole trader with no payroll, it's about $30 a month, and it will save you so much time because you can easily generate your invoices. You've got all that tracking as well. You can send out an email directly from Xero. And I could talk all day about Xero, but you can also use QuickBooks or MyOb, but Xero is my preference. But also, if you have got limited, if you've probably got less than 50 transactions a month, I would be sticking to the spreadsheet, in all honesty. And again, once it's set up, it's really easy to do. And as long as you're doing it on a regular basis, super easy. Having multiple income streams. So, time's a little bit tough at the moment, and we can't necessarily rely on that same money coming in like it has for the last little while. So we need to get creative about where can we generate more income for our success. So to be more profitable, you can either increase your revenue or decrease your expenses, or a combination of both. So looking at your numbers and understanding them and knowing where they're coming from, and then being able to change that to either increase or decrease depending on what we're trying to achieve. And monitoring and analyzing your finances each month. So by having a Xero system or your spreadsheet, and you go in every month and do it, you'll sit back and go, right, did I make some money this month? Or how much have I got in my bank account? Or, asking yourself those questions. And as I've said, if this is not your area of expertise, either get help to learn it or outsource it so that you can spend time doing the stuff that you enjoy. Now we're going to move on to GST registration. So just with a quick show of hands, who on the call, and for those watching at home as well, who is GST registered? That's okay. I've got some that are and some that aren't. So this will be really good for people to understand why some people are GST registered. And for those that aren't, it's a really important conversation to think about, when will I need to think about GST registration? Every business is different, so it does, you will need to talk to an accountant, but also I'm happy to have a chat as well. But once you see what we're going to go through, you'll get a better understanding where you are sitting in relation to GST registration and the different reasons there are to register for GST. Now, my pet peeve when it comes to GST is that accountants generally only look at whether you're going to aim for a revenue of $75,000 for the 12 months. So this is a rolling 12 months, but let's say for the next financial year, if we're predicting and forecasting more than $75,000 of income, we definitely need to register for GST. So that is the ATO threshold, but you can also voluntarily register before that for all these other reasons. And this is why I do this webinar, so that people are aware of these other reasons of why we need to consider GST. So for some grants, you need to be registered for GST. It is a requirement, and if you're not registered for GST, you won't be able to apply. This is just so the government knows that you're a bit more of a legit business, because anyone can really have an ABN and there's really nothing you need to do till the end of the year in your tax return. Whereas GST, there's a bit more legislation and regulation around it that we need to be keeping better records and things like that. It does show credibility of your business. So if you're sending out an invoice, people could be thinking, oh, they're not earning $75,000. And it's just a mind thing, but it's something to be thinking about. If you're a consultant, not registered for GST, I would depend, regardless of where you're starting in your business, if you're starting on day one, register for GST. It doesn't matter if you're a B2B, business to business supplier, it doesn't matter whether you're GST or not from a budget point of view. So all our accounts, when you're GST registered, are exclusive of GST. So if you're charging $5,000 without GST, it's $5,000. If you're charging with GST, obviously it's $5,000 plus the 10%, so $5,500. But in their books, they will be showing the $5,000 as the expense, and the GST will go to the GST line. So If you're not sure about that, just get in touch and we can have a chat. There is easy compliance. There is this misconception that GST is really hard. If you set up properly with the right process and the right people, whether it's you doing it or your accountant or your bookkeeper, it is simple. And making sure you've got one bank account for your business. That's the key. You can also claim back GST on your business purchases. So this is where the revenue of $75,000 comes undone a little bit. If you were setting up a business and buying a laptop, setting up your office, if you were creating a shop and all that kind of stuff, you've got money going out on day one before you bring any money in. If you're not GST registered at that point, you can't claim back 10% of all those costs. So that is a really, really big thing. If you're investing, even if it's $5,000, there's still $500 of GST available there to get back, claim back. You can do monthly, quarterly, or annual returns. I recommend quarterly because it also forces you to go in and at least be doing quarterly financial analysis on your business. Monthly is better, but in terms of the reason why I don't do monthly GST is because that is, coming back to your cash flow, that's an outlay every time. So at least quarterly, you can sort of have it in your second bank account and build it up, or allocate it from when your revenue comes in into that second bank account straight away. And so when GST is due, you've got the funds there. And also better to do it 4 times a year than 12 times a year. Just like payroll, I've only ever been paid monthly because it's 12 times a year in the places I worked. Weekly is 52 and fortnightly is 26. So, need to take into consideration how many times do we want to be looking at our accounts. And if it's not really our thing, we don't want to be doing more than we need to. It can also help with the financial analysis because it is making you go into your system, reconcile it all, work out whether those expenses were right, what income was coming in, what more do you need to be doing, and where you're sitting profitability. So one thing I see is when businesses don't register for GST in the early stages, they then unexpectedly hit the 75,000 or they have to register for GST. And then they're like, well, I can't absorb the 10%, so I need to put my prices up. So let's just avoid that. So you are losing 10%, or you build your prices up from day one, knowing you're going to charge GST later on. And also, retrospectively registering for GST is actually not difficult, but it was actually quite hard to find it. I thought it was through the business register, but it was actually as a sole trader through your ATO and your MyGov. So again, just do it when you register your business, and it's one tick of a box. One thing that I also see is people always aware of, oh, I'm near the 75,000, I won't take this job on, or I won't do this. So you don't want that ceiling on top of you, because you're like, oh, well, if I make more money, I have to register for GST. If you're already registered for GST, that is just completely taken off the table. So don't limit your growth plans. And, there are some people out there that you can say that you can register today and do it for a couple of months, claim all your expenses back, and then deregister. So when we decide we're going to register for GST, apart from exceptional circumstances, we do need to remain as GST registered. Even if we decide to shut down a business or have a bit of a break, we can always do a nil return. No money coming in, no money going out. So that's absolutely fine. Does anyone have any questions on that? But these are the considerations for GST that people are not talking about. And I saw it through COVID where there were too many people not registered for GST. And when you found out, it was because their accountant had said, no, you're not going to earn the $75,000. Yet they haven't considered all the other things that I've listed there. Now, I think
I have a question, sorry.
That's right. Yes, Jess.
So I've just started a second business.
Yep.
I'm not registered for GST. I don't know how it's going to go. But since I have 2, should I assume that, should I just assume that there's a good chance that it could hit 75K?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to what your goals are, but also how you've set up your business. So if you're running 2 businesses, you can run 2 businesses under the same ABN. Or if you've set
Yeah, so it is under the ABN thing.
sorry, say that again.
Oh, sorry, you cut out as well. Yeah, so I am sole trader and they're both registered under the same ABN.
So if they're both registered and one is registered, then your GST goes across both.
Sorry, no, I'm not registered for GST,
Okay.
but both businesses are on the same ABN.
Yep, so it's by ABN. So if the sum of both businesses is projected to be income of more than $75,000, you need to register for GST and then that'll cover both.
Yeah.
Cool. Well done on starting a second business.
Thanks.
So expenses. Now, this is one thing that Sandra and me are regularly talking about, where I think she's got a shoebox of receipts, or I think somebody told me they don't even keep receipts. So, you know, I'm all about good habits. When we're setting up our businesses or we're in the early stages, or even if you're not, even if you've been in business for years, now is the time to start collecting and keeping and saving those receipts. Now, I will say that the ATO guidance or rule is that we technically don't have to have a receipt for anything less than $75. However, if you in the future are going to outsource your bookkeeping, you cannot expect your bookkeeper to reconcile your accounts from the bank statement without a receipt in front of them. And there's a couple of reasons for that, because in Australia, the GST rules are very complex. And so you can't just assume that there's 10% of every receipt that we get, because there's not. New Zealand is like that, so it's a bit easier, but in Australia, we're not. So we need to have those receipts saved. So if you've got Xero, for example, you can upload the receipts, take a photo, and they're all in there. If you've got a spreadsheet, you can again attach them, take photos of them, have them somewhere, or keep them in your shoebox by month. So at least have a folder, have them in there so that at least if you're audited later down the track, you have the records. But again, it is just good practice. And it means that later on, when you've got people working for you, when you've got a bigger business, you're already in the habit of doing it. And also if you, when you're analyzing your expenses, you can be like, well, what was that for? Okay, I know what the vendor was and where it was, but what was I there for? And sometimes the receipt gives that extra detail. So I just want to encourage you, if you want to be in business and want to spend money, you need to be saving those receipts. So again, I can't stress this enough, having a separate bank account for operations and using that bank account for all your business expenses. And in the event, so get a bank card that's from that account, so that you can efficiently, you know, it comes from the bank statement and you code them and you match it to the receipt. If you haven't got enough money in your bank account and you do your business bank account and use your own personal bank account, when money comes into your business bank account, pay yourself back. Pay yourself back at the amount of the expense and then just use that transfer as if that was the actual transaction. So you can see when we set this up properly with a separate bank account, and a few processes, we're good to go. It all comes back to that. Regularly reconciling your business bank accounts, whether it's on your spreadsheet or Xero or QuickBooks. Do it fortnightly, monthly, and starting good habits. So it doesn't matter whether they're saved electronically or paper form. You can save photos and keep them on your computer in a separate folder. You can save them into the software that you're using, but they just need to be saved somewhere. Also, if you are saving them in paper form, make sure they're out of the sun, because the receipts will fade as time goes on. And knowing what the expense related to. So some receipts are really obvious and some they're not. So if it's a coffee, what networking event was it? Who were you there with? So that we've just got some detail. Utilizing the software that is out there. It is designed to make things easy and streamlined. If you can take a photo when you've got the fuel in your car, or you've been out for coffee or lunch with a client or a networking event, that's what you need to do. And then when next week, next month, when you come to the computer to update it, we can know what it's for. Yes, Panayoda, I have a spreadsheet that will track your monthly records and make it really, really easy. So I will send that through later. So set up your filing system. What works for you? And also think about what's your process? Are you going to do it? Is someone else going to do it? How can you get someone else to reconcile your stuff if you're not giving them the information? Already talked about that. Creating direct debits for regular payments. Now, there's two schools of thought here because obviously, we know sometimes cash flow can be a bit of an issue, but for those smaller reoccurring expenses, direct debits where you don't have to be thinking about them can be really easy and streamlined. So checking the ATO requirements. So I think ATO require that you're keeping records for 5 years at least. I think it even is 7. So if you are audited in the future, you can at least get them. Yes, we've got them on email and all that kind of stuff, but we really should have them in one place just to make it easier. Yeah, so I did look that up. ATO, 5 years. That's 5 years from the financial year as well. So I just want to talk a little bit now about your expectations of your accountant and bookkeeper. And I see it time and time again where people are expecting a lot of their accountant. They're treating them like a business coach. They're treating them like a strategy coach. But absolutely, all they want to do is look retrospectively over what you've done in the past. So you do want them to be qualified. Someone can't call themselves a chartered accountant unless they are truly qualified. So we've gone through years of exams, internships, study. I did a 6-hour exam and also kept up our membership and our CBD as we go. So we want to be making sure that our accountant is a chartered accountant. If they're not, they can't sign off on your financial statements at the end of the year. They'll also have a commerce degree. So, they've done that first, then they've become qualified. They really are interested in your annual financial statements. So preparing your tax return at the end of the year to be able to make sure we're paying the right amount of tax to the ATO. They're worried about accounting policy. Now, for small business, that doesn't really, we haven't got too much going on. It's not that complex. So there shouldn't be anything to adjust or minimal adjustments at the end of the year. And tax returns are their thing, not mine. Using an accountant to set up your company, that might be something you might consider in the future, and making sure you're getting the right guidance and the right structure of setting up your company as well. You can do it yourself, but I do recommend that when you get to that point, it's all part of the strategic focus of your business growth. And business and tax planning. So you might have heard people talk about the instant asset write-off, and during COVID, the government increased that in Australia to $150,000 for the year. For this new financial year, it's actually gone back down to 20 or 30,000. But that's where at the end of the year, people are thinking, well, will I end up with a tax bill? Should I go and buy another vehicle? And again, I absolutely detest that is how they operate, because you've still got to have the cash flow. And I have seen instances of clients where they have ordered a whole lot of stock prior to year end to reduce their tax, and then had an absolute cash flow problem for nearly 12 months to try and dig themselves out of that hole because they bought the wrong stock. So again, we need to be confident in how we're operating our business. And an accountant is not there all day, every day. And when I was doing a lot of business coaching, a lot of people, I just do that with my accountant. I'm like, what, once a year? Are they there every day or every week or every month making decisions with you of how you're going to operate your business? I went to an accountant's meeting with a client a couple of years ago. The business wasn't going so great. Our wages was our biggest cost. And the accountant was like, oh, you just have to close the shop a couple of days. That'll reduce your wage bill. And he said that 2 years in a row. And I just sat there and did not say a word. And I just thought, this is what is wrong with accountants, because they just have no idea. So make sure you know what your accountant does and doesn't do, and make sure we're getting the right people in your business. And a bookkeeper, they will not work from a spreadsheet. An accountant will for your tax return, but a bookkeeper on an ongoing basis will not work from, well, very few will work from a spreadsheet. But if you're using a spreadsheet, you probably don't need a bookkeeper. So that's your indication there as well. They will do your bank reconciliations. So they will match off your bank statements with your receipts. So you've got to give them the receipts, and in Xero matching them off. So it's basically looking at data entry, and also they might raise invoices for you. They might help with debt collection if people haven't paid their bills. Sometimes it's a good idea to have another person chasing that up so that you can, continue to deliver for the client and it doesn't come down to money. And we're all a bit funny about that, but sometimes we just have to do what we need to do to get that money in a bank account. Expense coding and payments, so they may work out what payments you need to make for the month, and then you can do the payments, and they will code those expenses as per your chart of accounts, your cheat sheet that you've given them at the start. They might process your payroll if you've got employees, and they can do your BAS statement. So that is where they are reviewing all your expenses, making sure we've accounted for the GST correctly, and then working out what we need to be paying from a GST point of view on that quarterly basis. The BAS stands for Business Activity Statement, which normally includes a GST and your PAYG if you've got employees. Remember, if you're a sole trader, you are taking drawings and you're not paying yourself through payroll. And a bookkeeper can assist sometimes with management reports. But again, be really careful, because again, I have witnessed this myself, where you might have a complex question to the bookkeeper and they try and answer it, but they're not an accountant. So you need to be working in collaboration with these people, where you've got your business coach or your mentor, your bookkeeper, your accountant, so that you're all on the right track and know what's what. The bookkeeper is the data entry person. And I've even seen bookkeepers that won't do the bank reconciliation. And so my question to them is, what are they doing? So you need to be, if you're engaging a bookkeeper or an accountant, you need to be really clear about what you are actually getting from their service. So here's a few tips just to work out how you can build a good relationship with your finance professionals, because they will be charging lots of money. And so we need to be making sure that we can get that right from the start. Yes, good question, Paniotta. So when we're doing our BAS statement and our GST, we have our GST coming in from our income, we have GST going out with the expenses we pay, and then we're claiming the net amount. But also make sure that you understand that BAS is paid quarterly, and that is different to income tax. So then at the end of the financial year, you've earned $50,000 as a sole trader. We need to pay tax on that because we haven't paid any PAYG to ourselves during the year. That is separate to our GST. So basically our income tax is calculated off what we call GST exclusive amounts. So that's why in our spreadsheets or our finance systems, we'll have the expense, GST exclusive, GST, and the total. But if anyone wants to have a chat about that, I'm more than happy to book in a call and just work through that, because it is a little bit confusing when you're starting out, or when you're going to GST. GST is separate from income tax. That's why that second business bank account is really important, because as your business grows, you'll have to pay more GST as the money comes in, and also pay more income tax as your profit goes up as well. So when it comes to finding an accountant or a bookkeeper or someone to help you out, feel free to have a chat first with me. But it's all about building trust and rapport, and finding someone that really cares about your business and also understands what you're trying to do in your business, and also what you're trying to do financially with the rest of your life. I've seen people have accountants where they're like, oh, you don't want to pay any tax, so we're going to make sure that you have zero profitability. And that person wants to go and buy a home. And they can't, because they've got no income showing from their business. So just make sure that there's a whole world approach to your business and what else is going on in your life to achieve your financial goals. Asking questions and being curious. Now, accountants are notorious for not sharing their methods and what they're doing, because they're like, oh, well, that's what people are paying. That's what people are paying us for. They haven't grasped the concept of they're providing the value, but we still want to understand. Whereas they're like, oh, well, if I tell them how to do it, they're going to go and do it themselves. No, we're not. I might, but the rest of you aren't. So that is changing, but it's changing very slowly. And I feel that is the number one issue when it comes to engaging with accountants and bookkeepers. Gain an understanding of what they do. Ask the questions. Okay, can you just show me? And even if you say to them, look, I'm still going to work with you, but I'd really just like to understand what you're doing so I can make sure that what I'm doing fits in properly and that we've got a streamlined approach. Also, they don't want you to do anything because they want to be able to charge you $300 or $400 an hour to fix it all up. So you need to find someone that is really working for you, not just trying to get fees in the bank. And making sure they understand your business. And if they don't, go and talk to someone else. Recommendations of accountants. I see it all the time on Facebook, and people are just, oh, I work with this person, I work with this person. But you need to find someone that you mutually respect, that you feel like comfortable, that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, look, I've got this question, or, you know, what am I doing? But I do feel like we rely on our accountants way too much, and they're not providing the service that we think. Open communication. So some accountants have become like lawyers, where you ring and ask a question and they'll charge you at 6-minute intervals. Do we really want that? Maybe, but being upfront about what they are charging for and not. And also, then you're too scared to go and ask. So we want that open communication, and we want to be able to have confidence in our business. Do your values align? If they're holding information, they're not sharing their process or how they're going to do it, you know, and that's not aligning with your values of how you're operating your business and how you want to be treated as a business owner as well. Talk to other small business owners and share your experiences. That's really, really important. But don't be afraid to shop around for accountants. Getting multiple quotes as well, and also getting them to itemize exactly what it is that they are providing the service and what are we being charged for each service. What's their hourly rate? And thinking about, can we trust them? Do they respect us, and do we respect them? What's their communication style? How often do they want to meet with us? You know, what are they going to be looking at? What are they providing? Are they just doing the annual return? That's fine. You probably won't talk to them for the rest of the year. So don't use them as your business coach, thinking, oh, they're going to provide my strategy. They're just not. Having the understanding, having awareness of your business and what they are doing to provide value back to you. Having greater confidence and being able to ask those questions. Making sure you manage those expectations of what they're doing for you and what you're doing for them. And same with timeframes. I've had people wanting their tax returns done early because they've got bills to pay or whatever. And their accountant's like, oh, I'll do that in 6 months' time. Or I'll do it next week. And next week was August, and one client got his in January, and it wasn't anything to do with us. So making sure you have that. All accountants are required to send you an engagement letter, which will state what they are doing, the fees, before they start doing the work for you. So making sure that you do that. And if there is an hourly fee, but they say, oh, I don't know how long this is going to take, you need to get them to say, well, okay, it's going to be 5 hours. And if it's when they hit the 5 hours, they need to contact you, a bit like a car service, really. So I always say to the car mechanic when I'm getting my car service, I'm like, anything over this amount, ring me and I'll give it the okay, rather than just spending heaps to get it done. So what service needs is provided? What was originally agreed? I know things change, but we need to be clear about this. What's in that engagement letter? There should be an annual review. And just because last year's fee was this, doesn't necessarily mean that next year's fee will be the same or more or less, because your business has changed. So you should be having that conversation with them to say, well, actually, my business has changed. And just because you've doubled your revenue, if the complexity hasn't changed, your fees shouldn't have changed either, because the same amount of work is involved. Get a quote before any work is requested. And if they will not provide a quote before it's requested, go somewhere else. Where's the value? What are they doing for your business? And having an upfront conversation, setting your expectations too. So if you want your tax return done or a certain report done by a certain time, tell them that. And how are they going to bill you? Are they expecting in a one lump sum? Are they going to put you on a payment plan, monthly, quarterly? Is it direct debit? How are you going to pay? So you can factor that into your forecast and your budget. And my one question that I always, just see how they respond. If I ring you for 5 minutes, will I be charged by the minute? Some have packages where you might be allowed a couple of phone calls a quarter, which is great, whether you use them or not, but at least it's in there. Others will charge you, but ask them that question. And also remember, knowing what they say. So if they say, yeah, just give me a call if you've got any questions, that's fine. All of a sudden you're barraging them with questions, and then you get a bill for $500. So just make sure that what they say, get it in writing, or even better, email it. So I know today we've whipped through how to consider GST, how to set up for success in your business with finances, how to track those expenses and start tracking them, and how can we find a good accountant or bookkeeper or finance professional to help you in your business. And scattered throughout all of that, I have talked about Xero. As I say, I absolutely love it. If you've spent 15 years in corporate like I have, with big, convoluted, complicated finance systems where you can't change anything, Xero is just an absolute godsend for business owners. And so I am offering, and I do these, I just don't advertise them, a 2-hour session via Zoom to go through your Xero, whether you've set it up or about to set it up, and then we can link the Xero processes into the rest of your business finance processes as well. So if you do book before the end of the month by sending me an email, you do save $100. We can also do it as 2 1-hour sessions, but 2 hours total. Or if you don't have Xero and don't think you need Xero, and you just want to have a chat about, well, how am I setting up my business finances? What should I be doing? And talking about all the other processes, you can still use this session for that as well. But I'll also show you Xero in it for 5 minutes. So if you do want to book into that, just send me an email, and then just say that you're from the Insync group, and we will get that booked in for you. So has anybody got any questions?
So Liz, with Xero,
Yeah.
and you talked about chart of accounts. So does Xero already have like the most general ones that are used?
They do, yes, they do. Yeah. So the great thing about Xero, it's already there. It's basically like a fancy template, and then we can add some in, but we're not starting from scratch. And if we're using Xero, we take what's there, work out, is it appropriate? Some of them are, some of them aren't. What are we missing? So then one of the ones that isn't in Xero is training expenses. So quite often I add that one in. Sometimes we might put a networking account in there as well, because that is a marketing cost, and we might not necessarily want it as marketing or advertising. But you can also, same with your revenue, if you've got revenue coming from workshops, from grants, from sessions, from online, we can split all that up as well. So that's what I mean by setting it up to work out how we're going to analyze it and how that's going to help your business.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
I have a question.
Hi, Joe.
Thanks, Liz. That was really good, actually. I really enjoyed that. And I've been toying with, what am I doing with my business?
Yep.
I generally just manually input anything. And my daughter said to me the other day, Mum, why are you manually inputting it? And I thought, I don't know any other way to do it. So it's just, I don't know, And so when I saw this course, I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I need to find out some bit more information. So I'm one of the old school, and we did it all manually and all that, but I know now there's so many better ways to do it. So I have a business with my daughter, and it is growing, and it is coming to the point where I was thinking I really need to set up something instead of me having to do all the manual. So I have been thinking about Xero. And do you suggest for someone whose business is growing that they should set that up first and then just go with it, because it will help you for the long term as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never found someone that has set up Xero and gone, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Because if you've obviously got transactions and you're operating now and you're manually updating them, that all disappears. So you're saving yourself time as well. And then you're also getting greater visibility, because you can run a few reports, click a few buttons, send an email out to someone that hasn't paid their invoice. You can see what's coming in. It'll just open your eyes to stuff that's just not available to you from that visibility of the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Okay.
In saying that, though, there's nothing wrong with the spreadsheet. I started out at the very start with the spreadsheet for about 6 months. And I think I was waiting for the end of financial year to start zero clean on the 1st of July. But that's why doing this webinar at this time, we're still in July, it's a good time. We can go back to 1st of July, download our bank statements, put it all in, and have a full financial year as GST registered and as in the system, so that when it comes to the end of financial year, click a couple of buttons, here's your report, send it off to your bookkeeper, your accountant, and your tax is done much easier.
My God, that sounds fabulous.
The other thing I will just say on Xero, most accountants now will charge more if you're not on something like Xero. So you've either got to have it all completely done and all watertight and matched off, and otherwise they will charge you more because they'll have more data entry or more hours to fix it up. And you know, there's nothing wrong with the manual. I remember my dad, couple of nights before the GST was due, he'd get his ledger book out, and then about 10 years ago, he's a farmer, 10 years ago the bank said, oh, you've got to go online, and for the first time Mum had to step in and take over because he was like, nah, I'm not
Yeah.
So you know, it was all there, and it's the same concept. So for people that have been doing it manually with a little bit of training and another thing I see is people get their accountant to set up Xero, and then the accountant goes, off you go. And I always like to have a couple of months of transactions where we can go through them all, set up some rules, and create that process to make it work for you and your business, because we're all very different.
So can you go back to the last tax year as well and input all of that?
And if you really want to, yep. So most bank accounts, you can download the transactions into a Excel or CSV file. And then we can upload them into Xero, and they'll all split them all out and then match them off, and away we go.
That sounds like a fair bit of work though, like depending on how many transactions.
It depends. It does depend on the transactions. I have done that I did 9 months with an organisation. They'd got into a bit of trouble where they just weren't keeping up with it. It took me 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had all the, mind you, they had all the expenses. They had a manual spreadsheet that they were running that I could match off. But, you know, once it's all set up and we know what we're working with, it doesn't take as long as you think, as long as we can get the bank feed in Excel or CSV file and we're not manually typing that in. It's reasonable. Because every month there will be transactions that repeat themselves. So in Xero, when you code them at the start, then they see that transaction the next month, they actually suggest what it is, and you don't have to do anything and click OK. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. Thank you very much.
No worries. Any other questions before we finish today?
I do have one that's a little bit outside the box, but I was just waiting to see if everyone else has any questions. So my income for my business comes through Stripe.
Yep.
So Stripe already takes a percentage.
Yep.
So the income that
I know exactly where you're going.
Good.
So when you're collecting money from Stripe, Shopify or Square or any of those online platforms, as Sandra said, they will take out the fees. You know, you'll sell something for $100, there's $7 worth of fees, you get 93 in your bank account. But what we do need to be actually recording is that $100 sale.
I thought.
What we do there, and this is really general, it's got to be set up properly, but basically we set up what's called a clearing account, which sits on the balance sheet. And when those transactions come in during the month, we put them all across to that clearing account. So we're saying, right, our $93. At the end of the month, we then take the Stripe report, and it said $100 of sales, $7 of fees, 93 net. We basically then do a manual journal for the 100, 93 and 7 and put that back into the sales on the profit and loss that way. It's the best way to do it. And a lot of people then say, well, hang on, I'm losing visibility of what I've sold on Stripe. Use your Stripe reports to work out what products and services you've sold. Xero is not going to provide all the reporting that you possibly need in terms of the intel for your business. But that's how we deal with that. So we can definitely, and whether that's Xero or QuickBooks or whatever, that's the unified approach, which is really easy. And you can do it, you know, if you're really busy, you could do it weekly, it doesn't matter, but monthly is quite nice. And I've done that for years and years. You just have to make sure if you run a profit and loss during the month and there's no sales in there, you've got to remember, oh, I haven't done my journal yet. So just a couple of big tricks there. But it doesn't, if you're thinking, oh, I'm just flicking across the 93, it's very marginal in terms of overall impact. But we just want to make sure it's right. And so we can, especially as fees and everything, I think I got an email the other day to say that strike fees are going up. And we just need to analyze how many fees are we actually paying in doing our business as well.
Okay.
If we don't do that, we actually don't have a line in our account saying strike fees. We're just reducing our revenue. Also, if we're sending out an invoice for $100 and someone's paying by stripe, you're not going to be able to reconcile that either. So there's a couple of wee tricks with that.
Okay. Yep.
But good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good question because I have that issue too.
Yeah. And a lot of accountants go, oh, we'll deal with it at the end of the year, but let's just set it up properly, do it so that you have control over your numbers on a weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a bit of a chat with you because I don't have that. And so this financial, it'll be good to set it up for this financial year.
Yeah. But also, like, are you using Xero or QuickBooks or?
Yep. Xero.
You can easily, it'll probably take a couple of hours to flick it all out from last year and put it back in.
Okay.
We can chat. I used to do all these fix-ups for days and days and days on corporate. So you learn the efficient ways of doing it and also working out, well, what information do I need? What outcome am I trying to produce? And what's my manual journal? And how can I calculate it?
Okay. Yep. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. If there's no more
sorry, I do have a quick question. I think my main questions have all been answered, but when you keep mentioning a journal. So when I first started the business, I had no idea what a chart of accounts was and what that meant. What is a journal?
So basically a manual journal is where we're doing a fix up. So we are manually journaling into the accounts rather than using the system. So
it's a transaction. Is it like it?
It's basically just moving from one place to another. So they have to balance. In Xero, for example, they actually, if you go and try to do a manual journal, they actually say your accountant should do it, which I agree with. But except for the sales one, once that's set up, you have a template, you plug in the numbers each month. It's easy. But yeah, basically, it's a way that we can fix things. So in the corporate systems, you couldn't edit any transactions. So you had to do a manual journal every time something was wrong. So say we coded something wrong, I'd then have to do all the lines to take it out of that account, credit that one and debit it into there. That's what I love about Xero. You can just go into the transaction, click edit, change the code, click OK, done. That is
do you have Xero, Jess?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And I'd like for this end of financial year, I finally only just got it like balanced and doing like making sense. But now that it does, it's brilliant, and I'm looking forward to actually being able to see what's happening with my money.
Absolutely, yeah. And today we haven't even talked about what reports can come out of there, and all that kind of stuff. So I do encourage you to think about, even if you've got Xero, even if you've had it for ages. I've had sessions with people that have had Xero for 5 years and have shown them some shortcuts, some tips, some ways to really use it to your advantage for your business, rather than the generic, do this, because it might not be relevant for your business.
Yeah.
You've inspired me to go and do my Xero.
I always, this is probably just because I'm an accountant, but you know, when you have those days where you're like, oh, I can't bother doing anything, but I've got heaps to do, I'll go into Xero, do a few reconciliation transactions, give myself a limit of about 5-10 minutes, and then that'll spur me on to do the next thing. So, you know, I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but if it's getting those habits, just logging in and chipping away at it, because it'll always be sitting there. I've got some clients that can't stand having more than 10 transactions when they go and log in unreconciled. So they have little, you know, they set themselves their own limits. And other people are going in once a month and doing the whole month in a row and then doing their reports. and going from there. So
Yeah. I used to book it into my calendar so that I would do it once a week because I'm doing the two businesses. So, but I've been too focused on other stuff. So I need to book that back into my calendar.
Because it's overwhelming when you go in and there's like 100 transactions and you're like, oh, this is going to take forever.
I've never had it to 100, thank God.
even I have, you know, there's sometimes when I'm like, oh, but again, you have to do it for GST. So there has been
That's right.
sometimes
Yeah.
where the quarter, I might have had a month off on holiday. I'll be like, I'll do it when I get back. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I've got 100 transactions.
Well, I think it was the day before the end of the financial year and there was discrepancy and I knew exactly what the discrepancy was, but I couldn't fix it. So it was like the day before, like the 30th of June or something. And I rang the accountant and said, oh, by the way, this is not, and she was going to fix it. She's like, I'm so glad you didn't do anything, you know, so they fixed it. Well, I think she fixed it. But yeah, that is one of the triggers that makes sure that I do all the reconciliations. Because again, I don't want to be paying them to do the reconciliations because that's just going to add more money, you know, to our bill.
I always used to say in Xero, you can't mess things up, but I think I'm going to stop saying that because I have been unraveling people's lately. When something hasn't quite happened, you know, someone's paid the wrong amount and they've tried to do a credit note, they've done the credit note the wrong way. And in the end, I just deleted everything they did and started again. But that's where people can get into issues. I've also had clients where their accountant's taken 10 hours to fix something and made a big mess of it, and I fixed it in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So you've got to be careful who you are engaging and that they are doing it properly. And you know, that's probably why I do love Xero, because to me it is really easy. And that challenge of like, oh, I've messed this up, something's not right, okay, these are the things we need to look at. And sometimes a bookkeeper doesn't have that knowledge to be able to do that. They are literally a data entry. No disrespect to bookkeepers, but we do need to be careful about what they can and can't do and what their skill set is.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question, sorry. Like if anyone has to go, you know, just a really quick one about, is it HubDoc? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I signed up for it, or I did whatever it is that you do for it, but it just looked way too confusing for me. It's not?
No.
Okay.
Again, this all comes down to, I'm a big advocate for setting it up properly for your business and showing you with some real life receipts and examples so that you can be set on your way. And I think what happens is people get it set up and they're like, oh, this looks too hard, and then forget about it. And it's just that little...
That's what happened. That's what I did. Yeah, it's too hard.
So maybe you need to do another training where it's like, bring everyone have Xero and HubDocs and we'll go through it and you can follow.
Yes, can we do that? Can we?
Same with the Xero. Like in Xero, there's actually a demo company as well that you can click on and play around with if you want to. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to do a Xero demo as a training, just so that people can see what they're doing using it, and then for the people that aren't using it, see how easy it is and how it will make it easier.
I would be interested in, like, I think this would be like a slightly more advanced tutorial on Xero, because I understand how to reconcile everything and generate reports. But when I'd like to be able to use like the feature I see when I'm generating invoices, I can put all my products into Xero and enter what it cost me and what I'm selling it for. And then obviously that can come up in a report somewhere. And I think I'd like to go into that a bit more. And
I've got a workshop on that, a half-day workshop on that.
Okay, good.
I mean, I used to do a lot of this Xero training. And as I said, I just don't advertise it, but more than happy to, if people are interested, to do that advanced reporting. So I normally do 2 workshops, or do a full day workshop. First half of the morning is making sure everyone understands the basics and that they're doing things properly, because that's the first thing. And then the second half of the day, or the second part of it, is the reporting what should we be looking at on a monthly basis? Have we set up our invoices properly? Have we set up items and our tracking and our profit and loss? What is the difference between profit and loss and balance sheet?
Yeah.
And I remember one of those workshops years ago, I said, I tried to teach them debits and credits. And I had 10 people in the room and I was like, rightio, we don't need that for Xero. And that's one good thing about Xero. It's the spent column and the received column, and that's all you need to know. Yeah. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your questions, some really good ones. And it looks like a few people want to explore how to use Xero to their advantage and to use it to its full functionality. And I'm a real big believer of only doing the reports we need to do and only doing the work we really need to do. There's no point setting up 25 chart of accounts if we only want to look at 2. And making sure that we match all that up, because we need it to be efficient. And I look forward to chatting with some of you later. So thanks for having me, Sandra, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks so
Bye.
much. See you. Bye.
Do you have to stop the recording or do I?
Can't find the button. You have to cut it off at the end. Oh my God. There we go.
Oh, stop.
Hang on. Hold on.
Is it record? Did I stop it or did you stop it?
Yeah, I'll stop it.